The Honda Passport is officially back, and this is very different than the last one that some of you guys may remember from the late 90s and early 2000s. This is using the same platform that's also used in the Honda Pilot and Honda Ridgeline. But there are subtle differences, and in this video, I'm going to tell you what those differences are and also show you the ins and outs and finally conclude with the good, the bad, and the ugly so you can decide if this Passport is the right SUV for you. Stay tuned.
First, a quick shout out to Honda of Lisle, which made this video possible. More information can be found about the dealership in the description below.
All right, let's start out by looking at the side view of this Passport. And I know a lot of you guys are thinking this looks almost identical to a Honda Pilot. And that's because the two SUVs do share the same platform. But there are subtle differences. First of all, the overall length decreased by 6.2 inches, mostly from the rear, and that's because this is a two-row SUV and the third row is taken out. And also, it's hard to notice, but the Passport is about an inch higher off the ground than a Pilot. And because of those two differences, because it's shorter and it's higher off the ground, approach angle and departure angle on a Passport is much better than a Honda Pilot. And why is that relevant? Because that is what Honda is going for. They wanted to make the Pilot a bit more sporty and a bit better off-roading for those people that want to tackle light trails. This is definitely much better suited than a full-size Honda Pilot. And there are other things that you do get, such as the standard 20-inch alloy wheels. They have their own design. It's unique to the Passport, and I do like them much better than what comes on a Honda Pilot. And there are other things such as the black mirror with the privacy glass, and you do see the trim that's not body colored, and that's on purpose so that if you guys are going off-roading with this, you don't scratch up the wheel wells and the bottom of the car. All right, moving on to the front, and you'll notice right away it looks very similar to a Pilot and a Ridgeline. And to be honest, at first glance, when I saw this in the showroom, I thought this was just a refreshed Pilot, but no, this is the new Passport. There are a few subtle differences. The grille is a unique design. However, I'm not sure about this shape, and I don't know what to think of it. It kind of reminds me of the new Mercedes grille that kind of has the same shape. And you do get other things such as the trim is all replaced with black, and this is standard across all the Passport models, which is great. But the bumper design, it's a two-tone, right? You get matte black and then you get body color, and it kind of just like curves on both sides like that. For me, I'm kind of neutral. I think it looks okay, but it could definitely look much better. What do you guys think? Do you like this front end? So moving to the back side of this Passport, this is unique. This does look very different from a Pilot. However, it reminds me of like a Ford Edge or a Ford Explorer. It has that same kind of design language and look. The taillights is different. The trim is still black carried over from the front, and the bottom bumper is mostly matte black. And you do get a spoiler and overall privacy glass back here. And you do get dual exhaust, which is pretty standard these days. But overall, just like the front, the backside to me is kind of just like Manila, kind of plain, and I'm neutral in terms of how this looks. Since we're back here, let me show you the trunk, which to me is actually really enormous. Because the trunk area was only decreased about 6 inches in length, and the width is still the same, this is an enormous trunk. You could fit whatever you want back here, and there are some unique things to the storage, which is down here. And when you open that up, let me show you, you do get a large storage area that you can put groceries or anything that you want. And also you can lift this up further and get more storage over there and the spare tire. One thing to note is, this might confuse some people, is once you open this up and you kind of tug, you can notice how the bottom trim kind of comes up with it, right? You have to tug really hard to be able to open this. So I think that might confuse some people at first. They might open this up and are like, oh, what's going on here? And then you realize that you got to tug pretty hard to open the back area. Outside of this, you do get cubby holes on the side over there. and over there. This overall floor height is actually very high. This is much higher than a lot of the other SUVs. So if you need to carry something up here, it is quite high. The only other thing I want to show back here is the buttons for the second row. Okay, both of these are motorized, and you can see there's one button on each side. And when you press it, the second row just folds down. And these are definitely needed because it is pretty much not possible to reach to the second row. There's no way to do it. So these are definitely a welcome addition. So I'm in the second row, and there is enormous amount of space. Enormous. I'm 5'10", and there's at least what? Almost a foot of legroom space left here. Same thing with headroom. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of width too. So those of you guys that are parents, there are 3 sets of car seat anchors in the second row. So you can have 3 car seats back here. Not a whole lot of SUVs allow that. But outside of that, it's pretty plain. This is a sport model, and you don't get a sunroof. You don't get, obviously, an entertainment center here. There is no climate control. There's no USB ports. All you get is a pair of vents, and that's pretty much it, and cup holders. You know, outside of the fact that you don't get a whole lot back here, you do get a whole lot of space. Sitting in the driver's seat of this Honda Passport, everything looks identical to a Honda Pilot and the Honda Ridgeline. From the door panels to the trim to the center entertainment stack over here to down here, and also the gauge cluster, the steering wheel. Those of you guys that are not familiar, it's a modern flow, right? You can see that there is aluminum trim there. You do get some cubby holes over there and cup holder, and overall that flows in. You do get 2 vents. This is a small screen, however, you do have all the buttons, the essential buttons like volume and so forth, right? And moving on, this is climate control, and you do have, this is a tri-zone, so you do have one for each side and also one for the rear auto. This is pretty standard defrosters. You do have just area here. I think that is just more meant for phones, you know, to put your phone here. You do have more area here to just put whatever you want. You get a power outlet, you get a 1 amp USB, and in here you do get 2 volts. Honda has replaced the traditional gear selector to this new one. It looks simple, but it still takes getting used to. This is park, this is reverse if you do that, and then neutral and drive, and then if you want to go to park, do that. This is for engine auto stop, and this is for changing the different types of modes for your all-wheel drive. So if you press that button, you can see that I'm in normal mode right now. You go to sport, mud, and sand, right? So outside of that, there's really not much else here other than 2 cup holders. There's a nice large screen in the middle that kind of gives you information about what's going on, and also RPM, miles per hour. On the side here, the fuel and the temperature, those are analog. All right, so since there's a little ditch area over here, I talked about how the Passport is better off-roading because it does have a better approach angle and a better departure angle. So right here, you can see that it does slope down a little bit. So I'm going to go over it and see if I scratch or hit anything. So as you can see, I did go over this. I did not scrape the bottom, or, you know, I did not scrape the front of the bumper or the rear bumper. So even something like this, the Passport could handle it just fine, and you don't have to worry about the bottom bottoming out or anything. So I'm behind the wheel. Let's go for a drive and see how this Passport handles the roads. So for me, this is almost like just driving my Ridgeline. I drive a 2018 Honda Ridgeline as my daily driver. So in terms of sitting position, it's almost exactly the same. Width-wise, the length is a bit shorter, but overall I mean, even the engine and transmission is very similar. The engine uses a 3.5 liter that pushes about 280 horsepower. The transmission is new. It's a new 9-speed that's also used in the Honda Pilot. Now, a lot of people are asking why Honda didn't put their 10-speed in here, and that's because the size. Honda did say that the size was the issue, so they went with a 9-speed. But this 9-speed is a retuned one that they put into the Pilot recently that has been calibrated so that it shifts very firmly, it shifts much quicker. Some of you guys that haven't driven large SUVs or minivans or trucks before, you do have to get used to the width. This Passport, even though it's 2 rows, it is very wide because it shares the same platform as my Ridgeline and Pilot. Drive impressions around this park, it is very quiet. I hear almost nothing in terms of road noise. The tires on here is spectacular. The tires are really nice. Even though they're 20-inch, it does not feel rough. It doesn't feel harsh. Everything feels actually pretty good, and it is super quiet. So the all-wheel drive system in here, if this was an Acura, they would label it the super handling all-wheel drive. Because it is Honda, they decided to label it the IVTM4, which stands for Intelligent Variable Torque Management. And that's because this Honda can move the torque up to 70% of the torque to the rear wheels, and then 100% to each side. So it does have torque vectoring. As you guys can see up front, there's a slight little hill, okay? We're talking about maybe 5 to 10 degree grade, but there is, you can see probably 5 or 10 inches of snow towards the end where it was shoveled. So I'm just going to take it. I left it on the auto mode or normal mode. I don't expect that we're going to have any kind of problem. Nope, none. Now, because of the extra inch of ground clearance, this Passport now comes in over 8 inches of ground clearance. And combined with the seats actually sit pretty high. You do get a more commanding view in this Passport than compared to some of the other 2-row SUVs out there. And a lot of you guys will probably like that because you feel like you're commanding the road. There's a snow mound. There's 3 little snow mounds over here. So I'm just going to take them and see what happens. Well, I felt the torque. Actually shift. You can actually feel it. You can actually hear what it happens. So that was uneventful. In terms of visibility, it's very good in here because of the commanding view where you're sitting and the windows are nice and big. You don't have the doors coming up to here like some of these other modern cars. You could see all around you quite well. So you're not going to have a problem with visibility in here. So another thing they have on here that's standard is this auto stop for the engine, which I just experienced it. I was just at a light and the engine turned on before I went, so you do have that split lag before your car starts moving once you floor it. So I'm not a fan of that, so it's good that they put a button right here so you can turn that off and not have to worry about it. In terms of lane departure mitigation, I have it on and it definitely works. It has to be able to clearly see the line. So for example, like right now, because of all the salt and snow out, it doesn't always see the lines. When it does come up and it'll warn you on the screen, and the steering wheel starts vibrating. If you floor it, it does move. It's not going to be the quickest SUV, but it's not the slowest either. So it does move this Passport pretty well. In terms of the transmission, you know, to be honest, I can't feel any of the shifts. It's pretty darn smooth. So I forgot I was in sport mode, so it will not shift. I just revved it up to 7,000 and it did not shift. You guys probably heard that. That was not ideal. Steering wheel, I do like. This plastic that they're using does feel cheap. I gotta admit that. I just kind of got used to it because it's the same one in my Ridgeline, but it does feel a little cheap. But overall, the size is pretty good. It's not on the smaller side, nor is it big. It looks pretty good. It looks modern. In terms of other things such as brake feel, I like it. It's a pretty linear feel. It does not feel mushy. Acceleration is decent with this V6. Steering feel is light. It's light. All right, guys, let's conclude and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about this Honda Passport. In terms of the good, there is a lot. First of all, let's talk about the space. You're getting an enormous amount of space in this two-row SUV. A ton of space up front and in the second row and in the trunk. Okay, so if you're looking for a very roomy two-row SUV for the family, you could definitely fit a whole lot in here. And also, speaking of families, in the second row, there is 3 latch points for car seats, which you don't see a lot in two-row SUVs. Also, in terms of the dash layout, center console, gauge cluster steering wheel, the whole design in here looks pretty good. And you do get Honda Sense, which means standard, you get things like intelligent cruise control, lane mitigation, collision mitigation, and all that stuff that's included. Now, in terms of the driving experience, I do think it's good in this Honda Passport. The seats and the overall height gives you a commanding feel. The visibility is great. And while you're driving, you can see everything around you clearly. And things like steering feel, brake feel, all that feels pretty good. So you're getting a whole lot of good with this Honda Passport. Now, in terms of the bad, I got to start out with the exterior looks, because Honda, I feel like, took the easy route. They basically used the same body, many of the same body parts, and it does look like a Honda Pilot from the front and from the side. Moving into the interior, in terms of the bad, in the second row, you don't get a whole lot. You don't get USB ports, you don't get climate control, you don't get sunshades, you don't get sunroof, you don't get any of that. All you get are vents, and that's pretty much it. Now, up here, there's not a whole lot of bad, but I would just say, like, in terms of features, including like some kind of blind spot monitoring would be nice. A sunroof would be nice. You know, the screen is a bit small. Outside of those things, you know, there's a couple buttons here where I pressed it and the screen just doesn't tell you what they are. So there's a few things up here where they're more feature related that I would think at a sport model you should get standard. And in terms of ugly, there's none. And there's nothing that really needs to be fixed right away. Last, I want to talk about the price. Now, this Sport Edition comes in the mid-30s, right around $34,000. But if you get the top of the line Passports, they do go up close to $50,000. And that's it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy this review. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for my next review video. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.